She broke me and I disappeared. I never meant to come back. Then she found me. The ballroom at the Whitmore Grand Hotel shimmered in gold light. Crystal chandeliers glowed overhead. A string quartet played something soft and expensive. Investors laughed too loudly, champagne glasses clinked, and the city skyline stretched beyond the glass walls like it belonged to him. And in that moment, it did. Adrian Keller stood near the center of it all, 32 years old, founder and CEO of Aegis Shield, the fastest growing cybersecurity firm in the Pacific Northwest. Journalists wanted quotes. Venture capitalists wanted meetings. Competitors wanted to be him. But Adrian only had eyes for one person. Elena Whitmore stood across the room in a midnight blue dress, speaking with a pair of board members. She looked calm, radiant, untouchable. The kind of woman who didn't just enter a room, she shifted its gravity. He slipped his hand into his jacket pocket and felt the small velvet box waiting there. Tonight, after the product launch speech, after the applause, after the future officially began, he would ask her to marry him. Marcus Hale appeared at his side, clapping him on the shoulder. "You did it, man. Series C closed, press is eating it up, you're officially unstoppable." Adrian smirked. "Don't jinx it." Marcus laughed. "Relax. This is your night." Their eyes met briefly, friends for nearly a decade, co-founders since the beginning. Adrian trusted him with everything. The lights dimmed slightly as the host announced Adrian's name. Applause filled the ballroom. He walked toward the stage, heart steady, future certain. He began his speech easily. "When I started Aegis Shield, it was in a studio apartment with a laptop and a lot of caffeine." Laughter. He scanned the crowd, finding Elena again. She smiled at him, but something about it felt tight, distracted. He pushed the thought away. Cybersecurity isn't about code. It's about trust. People trusting that what they build won't be stolen, that what they create won't be destroyed. A vibration buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it. Another buzz, then another. The front row shifted. Two investors leaned toward each other, whispering. One of them stared down at his phone, face draining of color. Adrian's voice faltered for half a second. He forced a smile. "Excuse me one moment." He stepped slightly aside, pulling out his phone. There were 27 new messages. "Marcus, call me, now." CFO, Lauren. "Adrian, what is this?" "Unknown number. You should check your company accounts." A link. His stomach tightened. He clicked. Screenshots filled the screen, internal transfers from Aegis Shield's primary account into a shell company. $6 million moved over 3 months. The authorization signature read, Adrian Keller. His throat went dry. "That's not possible," he whispered to himself. More messages flooded in. Investor group chat. "Care to explain?" Board member. "We need to speak immediately." He looked up. The room had changed. Conversations were no longer celebratory. They were sharp, urgent. Phones were out. Eyes were on him. Marcus was no longer smiling. Adrian stepped off the stage entirely now, pulse hammering in his ears. "Marcus," he said tightly, walking toward him. "Tell me this is some kind of mistake." Marcus's expression was carefully neutral. "Adrian, I just saw it too. You know I didn't move that money." Marcus hesitated, just long enough. "Did you?" The words hit like a slap. Before Adrian could respond, another murmur rippled through the room. Someone near the entrance gasped softly. Adrian turned. Through the glass doors of the ballroom lobby, he saw Elena. She wasn't looking at him. She was walking quickly toward the exit elevators. And beside her, Marcus. No, not the Marcus standing in front of him. Another memory overlapped in his mind. A text from a junior employee earlier that week he'd ignored. Something about seeing Elena at the Whitmore downtown hotel. Adrian's chest tightened. "Where is she going?" he asked. Marcus didn't answer. Adrian moved fast now, pushing past guests, ignoring the whispers. "Elena!" he called out as he reached the lobby. She stopped. For a moment, relief flickered through him. She would explain. She would laugh and say this was insane. He approached her, lowering his voice. "Tell me this isn't real." Her eyes, those steady, intelligent eyes he'd loved for 5 years, wouldn't meet his. "Adrian," she began, "did you know about the money?" Silence. "Did you?" His voice cracked despite himself. Her jaw tightened. "This isn't the place." Then where? He demanded. Because right now it looks like my entire company just collapsed and you're walking out the door. Behind him, flashes from journalist cameras began popping. Elena finally looked at him, and there was something there he couldn't read. Fear, guilt, regret. I'm sorry, she said softly. The elevator doors opened. She stepped inside. Sorry for what? He asked, stepping forward. But the door slid shut between them. He stood there, frozen, as the elevator numbers climbed. Behind him, someone called his name sharply. Adrian Keller? He turned. A man in a dark suit held out a sealed envelope. You've been served. The music in the ballroom had stopped completely now. Adrian took the envelope with trembling hands. Federal investigation notice, preliminary charges, financial fraud, misappropriation of corporate funds. The paper blurred in his vision. This isn't real. She wouldn't do this. Marcus wouldn't. A camera flash exploded in his face. Mr. Keller, did you steal investor money? He looked back toward the elevator one last time. Empty. And for the first time in his life, Adrian Keller felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. By morning, Adrian Keller was no longer a CEO. He was a headline. Tech prodigy under investigation for fraud. Aegis Shield founder accused of embezzling millions. The words followed him everywhere, on television screens in the lobby of his own building, across financial blogs, crawling beneath morning news anchors who said his name like it was already synonymous with guilt. Adrian sat in a federal conference room 48 hours after the launch party, staring at a printed stack of transaction reports. Across from him, two investigators flipped through identical copies. These transfers originated from your executive authorization key, one of them said calmly. Biometric confirmation included. That's impossible, Adrian replied for what felt like the 100th time. His voice was hoarse from lack of sleep. I never approved those transactions. They were routed through a shell corporation registered under an alias connected to your social security number. Adrian blinked. What alias? The investigator slid another document across the table. The name printed there meant nothing to him, but the signature at the bottom, digitally stamped, looked exactly like his. His stomach twisted. This was constructed, he said quietly. Someone built this. The investigators exchanged a glance that said, of course you'd say that. Later that afternoon, the board convened without him. He wasn't allowed in the room. Through the glass walls, he could see silhouettes moving, hands gesturing, heads shaking. Marcus Hale exited first. He looked composed, controlled, already shifting into leadership mode. Marcus, Adrian called out, standing quickly. Marcus paused. You know I didn't do this. Marcus sighed softly, like he was the one burdened. Adrian, the evidence is bad. Bad doesn't mean true. There are records, biometric confirmations, offshore routing. Investors are furious. You're my partner, Adrian said, stepping closer. You built this with me. Marcus held his gaze for a long second. I have to protect the company. The words landed colder than any accusation. Are you testifying against me? Adrian asked. Marcus didn't answer directly. The board asked me what I knew. And I told them the truth. Adrian's jaw tightened. Which is that you had full control over financial authorizations. A slow, suffocating realization began forming in Adrian's chest. This wasn't panic. This wasn't chaos. This was precision. The transfers were spaced out, small enough not to trigger immediate alerts, routed through layered accounts, hidden behind legitimate vendor payments. Someone had taken time, care, thought, and he had never seen it. How did I not see this? That question echoed through him constantly now. That night, alone in his penthouse, Adrian called Elena for the 12th time. Voicemail. He tried texting. We need to talk. Just tell me the truth. Did you know? No response. He stared at their last message thread from a week ago. Her. Proud of you. Big night coming. Him. Couldn't have done it without you. His chest felt like it was caving in. The next week blurred into depositions, financial audits, frozen accounts. Marcus formally testified that Adrian had exclusive late-night system access on several of the transfer dates. Which was technically true. Adrian often worked late, trusted no one else with final approvals. He had built the very structure now being used against him. One evening, his CFO Lauren visited him quietly. They're preparing to remove you officially, she said, sitting across from him at his own dining table. I know. Off the record, this is too clean, she whispered. Whoever did this knew internal protocols. Adrian looked up sharply. So you believe me? I don't believe you're sloppy, she said carefully. And this isn't sloppy. That was the first time since the ballroom that someone hadn't looked at him like a criminal. But belief wasn't proof. Weeks passed. Investors withdrew. The board voted unanimously to suspend him indefinitely. His access badges were deactivated, his email accounts locked. He stood outside the Aegis Shield headquarters one afternoon, watching employees he had hired avoid eye contact as they walked past him. A journalist shouted from across the street, "Adrian, any comment on the missing funds?" He didn't respond. Inside, something was breaking, not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly, piece by piece. Finally, the call came from his attorney. "Adrian," she said, measured but firm, "the prosecution is dropping formal charges. For now." He closed his eyes. "Why?" "Insufficient direct evidence tying you personally to intent. The digital trail is strong, but not airtight." A breath he didn't realize he'd been holding escaped him. "So it's over?" There was a pause. "The criminal case, yes. But the damage?" She didn't finish. He didn't need her to. His company was gone. His reputation was ash. Investors would never touch him again. And Elena still hadn't answered a single message. Adrian ended the call and looked out at the city skyline from his darkened apartment. Legally innocent. Professionally destroyed. He whispered into the empty room, "What did you do to me?" And for the first time, a colder thought followed it. What if she never loved me at all? The penthouse was almost empty when Adrian finally decided to leave it. Not dramatically, not in anger, just quietly. The art had been sold first, then the car, then the watches he once collected like trophies of success. He kept almost nothing, just a duffel bag, a laptop, and the box of documents his attorney taught him to hold on to just in case. He walked through the echoing space one last time. 5 years of ambition had lived here. Late-night strategy calls, Elena curled up on the couch reading while he worked, plans, futures, a ring still hidden in a drawer he had never opened again. He stopped at that drawer now. For a long moment he stared at it, then he closed it without touching the ring. The man who bought the apartment never met him. Everything went through brokers, quiet transactions, clean exits. That was the pattern now. No scenes, no explanations. Lauren called in 3 times the week after the charges were dropped. He didn't answer. Marcus left one voicemail. "Adrian, this didn't have to end like this. Call me." Adrian deleted it without listening twice. Elena never called. That silence was louder than all of it. At the airport, he wore a baseball cap and carried no checked luggage. He purchased a ticket in cash under a temporary consulting contract arranged by an old legal contact. Destination: Chicago. From there, another flight 2 days later. He didn't tell anyone, not even his parents. As the plane lifted into the clouds, he looked down at the shrinking grid of the city that had once felt like proof of his worth. It looked smaller now, insignificant. He leaned his head back and closed his eyes. This is what disappearing feels like. Not dramatic, just empty. In Chicago, he met with a discreet identity consultant recommended by his attorney, a former military intelligence specialist who didn't ask personal questions. "You sure about this?" the man asked as he slid documents across the desk. Adrian stared at the new name printed on the page. Daniel Cross. Date of birth adjusted. Clean credit history constructed. Relocation paperwork prepared. "You understand?" the man continued. "This isn't just paperwork. This is erasure. You won't be able to reclaim the old you easily." Adrian gave a hollow half-smile. "I don't plan to." He signed. The pen felt heavier than it should have. The man she loved died that night. He didn't say it out loud. He didn't need to. It was already true. Weeks later, Daniel Cross stepped off a bus in Seattle with one suitcase and a new driver's license in his wallet. Rain misted the streets. The skyline was sharp and gray, nothing like the glittering city he left behind. No one here knew Adrian Keller. No one here looked at him like a fallen prodigy. He rented a modest apartment, paid 6 months up front, no references required. He started small, consulting contracts under Daniel Cross, private cybersecurity audits for firms that valued discretion over publicity. He kept his head down, took no interviews, attended no networking events. When women showed interest, he kept conversations polite and brief. When clients praised his insight, he nodded once and moved on. Emotion became a liability, attachment became a risk. One night, about 3 months after arriving, he stood in his kitchen staring at his reflection in the dark window. "You survived," he said quietly to himself. But survival wasn't living, it was containment. He opened his laptop and typed his old name into a search engine, Adrian Keller. Articles still lingered. Some updated to reflect that charges were dropped. Most still framed him as suspicious, ambiguous, questionable, a cautionary tale. He closed the browser. That man was gone. Daniel Cross didn't build empires, he built walls. Years passed. Slowly, carefully, Daniel founded a small private security firm. No flashy branding, no press releases, just results. His client list grew quietly. His bank account recovered steadily. His heart remained sealed. 5 years later, Daniel Cross stood in his downtown Seattle office overlooking Elliott Bay. Clean lines, minimalist furniture, no personal photographs. An assistant knocked lightly on his door. "There's someone here to see you," she said. He didn't look up from his tablet. "Do they have an appointment?" "No." "Then reschedule." She hesitated. She asked for Adrian Keller. The name hit the air like a crack of thunder. Daniel's hand froze. Slowly he looked up. "Excuse me?" he said, his voice calm, but something old and buried had just begun to wake. Daniel Cross built his company the way a man builds a bunker. Quietly, strategically, without emotion. Cross Strategic Solutions occupied the top floor of a modest glass building overlooking Elliott Bay. No flashy logo, no media interviews, just a discreet website and a reputation that spread by word of mouth among executives who preferred problems solved without headlines. Inside, everything reflected discipline. Neutral colors, clean lines, no framed awards, no photographs, no trace of a personal life. Daniel liked it that way. "Client file's ready," his assistant, Nora Bennett, said one morning as she placed the folder on his desk. "Biotech firm, internal breach." Daniel nodded once. "Timeline?" 6 months. They think it's an employee. "It's always someone they trust," he replied calmly. Nora studied him for a moment. "You ever get tired of being right?" He didn't smile. No. That was the difference now. Adrian Keller used to celebrate victories, used to feel the rush of building something big. Daniel Cross solved problems like a surgeon, precise, detached, steady hands. Later that afternoon, he met with the biotech CEO in the conference room. "I need discretion," the man insisted, fingers tapping nervously on the table. "If this leaks—" "It won't," Daniel said evenly. "But understand something. If someone inside your circle is responsible, the evidence will lead there." The CEO swallowed. "Even if it's personal?" Daniel's expression didn't change. Especially then. He felt it. A faint, distant echo in his chest at that word. Personal. He ignored it. That night, he declined an invitation from a woman he'd had dinner with twice. "You're hard to read," she told him over wine the week before. "I can't tell if you're uninterested or just guarded." "I'm practical," he had replied. She laughed. "That's not romantic." "I'm not looking for romance." It wasn't cruelty, it was honesty. He didn't trust love anymore. Love had been a vulnerability once, a blind spot. He wouldn't make that mistake again. Still, sometimes, in the quiet hours after work, memories slipped through. A melody from a restaurant piano would pull him back to that ballroom. A certain shade of blue would remind him of a dress. A woman laughing in the lobby downstairs once made him freeze mid-step because, for half a second, it sounded like her. Each time, he shut it down. The man she loved died that night. He had repeated that line enough times that it felt like doctrine. One evening, as rain streaked against the office windows, Nora stepped into his doorway. "You ever think about expanding?" she asked casually. "New York, maybe?" "Growth attracts attention," Daniel replied without looking up. "Attention invites scrutiny." She crossed her arms. "You built something powerful here. Why keep it small?" "Because empires burn." But he didn't say that. Instead, he closed the file in front of him. "This size is enough." Nora tilted her head slightly. "You talk like someone who's already lost something." Daniel met her gaze, calm, unreadable. "We all have," he said. His phone buzzed on the desk. Unknown number. He ignored it. A second buzz. Nora glanced at the screen. Persistent. Let it go to voicemail. She nodded and left. A few minutes later, she returned. This time her expression different. Tighter. "There's someone in the lobby," she said carefully. Daniel didn't look up. "Does she have an appointment?" "No." "Then reschedule." Nora hesitated. She didn't ask for Daniel Cross. Silence. Daniel's hand still over his keyboard. She asked for Adrian Keller. The name lingered in the air like something fragile and dangerous. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. That name doesn't exist here, he said evenly. She seemed very sure it does. Something cold moved through him. Not panic, not fear. Recognition. Did she give her name? He asked. Nora nodded slowly. Elena Whitmore. The world didn't shatter this time. It narrowed. 5 years of control. 5 years of silence. 5 years of burying. And now... She's waiting, Nora added softly. Daniel stood. For a brief second, his reflection in the dark window looked unfamiliar again. Not Daniel, not fully Adrian. Just a man who had convinced himself he was past it. I'll handle it, he said. And as he walked toward the lobby, he realized something unsettling. He wasn't sure whether he wanted to see her, or prove that she no longer had the power to hurt him. The lobby was quiet. Too quiet. Daniel walked toward the reception area with the same steady stride he used in boardrooms and negotiations. Controlled, neutral, unreadable. But inside, something old was cracking open. Elena Whitmore stood near the glass wall overlooking the bay. For a second, he saw her the way he used to. Elegant posture, dark hair falling over one shoulder, hands clasped as if she were holding herself together. Then the details sharpened. She looked thinner, paler. The effortless confidence she once carried had been replaced with something guarded, cautious. 5 years had touched her. They had carved into him. She turned when she heard his footsteps. Their eyes met. Silence stretched between them, thick and heavy. He stopped a few feet away. "You're in the wrong office," he said evenly. "There's no Adrian Keller here." Her lips parted slightly. "I know who you are," she replied softly. The sound of her voice hit him harder than he expected. It hadn't changed much. Still calm, still measured, still dangerous. Daniel's expression didn't shift. "You've mistaken me for someone else." "No," she said, holding his gaze. "I haven't." A flicker of something, anger, maybe relief, passed through her eyes. "You can change your name," she continued. "You can move across the country, but you can't erase who you are." His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Why are you here, Elena?" Hearing her name on his lips seemed to steady her. "I've been looking for you for months." "That sounds like a you problem." The words were cold, deliberate. She absorbed them without flinching. "I deserve that." He studied her carefully. No jewelry, no visible signs of wealth, no Marcus. The name rose in his mind like a shadow. "You don't get to walk into my office," he said quietly, after 5 years of silence, and act like we are about to have a conversation. Her fingers curled slightly at her sides. "I didn't come here to act." "Then why did you come?" The question carried more weight than he intended. Because part of him needed to know. She inhaled slowly. "You don't know the truth." A bitter laugh almost escaped him, but he stopped it. "The truth? I saw the truth. You saw what he wanted you to see." The word he echoed between them without being spoken. "Marcus." Daniel stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Careful. You think I betrayed you?" she said, her voice trembling now, not dramatically, but with restraint. "You think I stood there and watched you fall?" "You left," he shot back. "You looked me in the eye and said you were sorry. Then you walked into an elevator and disappeared." Her composure cracked for the first time. "You think that was easy?" "I think you made a choice." She swallowed. "You're right," she whispered. "I did." The admission hit him like a strike to the chest. There it is. He turned slightly away, forcing his breathing to remain steady. "This conversation is over." "It can be," she said quickly. He faced her again. "You don't get to decide that." Her eyes shimmered, not with tears, but with something heavier. Fear. "You were never the target," she said quietly. He froze. "What?" She took a step closer now, lowering her voice as if the walls might be listening. "The money transfers, the investigation, that night at the hotel. It wasn't about stealing from you." "Then what was it about?" Her lips trembled slightly before she forced the words out. "It was leverage." The air between them shifted. "Marcus knew you were planning to buy him out," she continued. "He knew you were going to cut him out of the company." Daniel's mind flashed back. He had drafted the buyout proposal. Confidential, stored offline. Only 2 people had access. Him and... "He found out," she said. "And when he did, he came to me." Daniel's eyes darkened. "And you went to a hotel with him." She closed her eyes briefly as if bracing herself. "He threatened me." The words landed softly, but they detonated inside him. "He said, if I didn't cooperate," she continued, her voice barely above a whisper, "he would destroy you completely. Not just your company, your freedom." Daniel's heartbeat slowed into something colder, calculated. What kind of threat? He asked. Elena looked at him fully now. The kind that makes you choose between losing the man you love and watching him go to prison. Silence swallowed the room. Outside, the grey Seattle sky pressed against the glass. Inside, 5 years of anger began to fracture, but not break. You're asking me to believe, he said slowly, that you sacrificed me to save me. Her voice broke. I'm asking you to understand that you never knew the whole story. And for the first time since you walked in, Daniel Cross didn't know which version of the past was real. Daniel didn't invite her into his office, but he didn't ask her to leave either. The door closed behind them with a quiet click, sealing 5 years of silence into one room. He remained standing. She did too. Distance, measured, necessary. Start talking, he said. Elena drew in a slow breath. Marcus found out about the buyout 3 weeks before the launch. That proposal was encrypted, Daniel replied instantly. Offline. He had access to your office after hours. Daniel's mind flickered through old memories. Late nights, shared security codes, unquestioned trust. You're guessing, he said coldly. No, she whispered. I saw the draft on his laptop. That caught him. You went through his computer? I wasn't looking for it. Her voice tightened. I saw your name in a folder. I opened it. And you didn't tell me? I tried. His eyes flashed. When? The night before the launch. You were rehearsing your speech. Investors were everywhere. I panicked. He let out a sharp breath. That's not an answer. She swallowed. He confronted me first. The words changed the air. Daniel's expression didn't move, but something inside him sharpened. He called me to the Whitmore downtown hotel, she continued. Said it was urgent. I thought it was about you. Of course she did. Back then, everything was about him. I walked into that room, she said quietly, and he was calm. Too calm. Daniel could picture it. Marcus, controlled, strategic, always 3 moves ahead. He told me you were planning to push him out, she said. He said you were already preparing legal documents. I was, Daniel replied. No apology, no shame. He was reckless. I know that now. Then why defend him? I didn't defend him. Her voice cracked for the first time. I was trapped. Silence fell. Daniel forced himself not to feel it. What did he threaten you with? He asked. Elena's fingers tightened around the strap of her purse. My father's medical records. Daniel frowned. What? He accessed private financial transfers from my family trust. My father had early-stage dementia. We moved money quietly to cover long-term care before it became public. Daniel's eyes darkened. He said he would leak everything, she continued. Claim your company was laundering funds through my family accounts. Tie it all together. That wouldn't have held up in court. It would have held up long enough to destroy you, she shot back. Long enough to freeze every asset. Long enough to bury you in litigation. He didn't respond. Because she wasn't wrong. Marcus understood optics, headlines, momentum. He told me he had already started altering internal financial logs, she said. He said the first transfer would go through within days, that he could make it look like you were siphoning funds. Daniel's jaw tightened. And what did he want from you? He asked. Silence. The word echoed. He said if I stayed quiet, if I didn't warn you, he'd keep it at financial charges. No criminal expansion, no prison. Daniel felt something crack open inside his chest. You chose to let me fall.
I chose to keep you out of a cell, she whispered. By letting them accuse me of fraud? His voice rose for the first time. By walking out that night and saying you were sorry? Tears gathered in her eyes, but didn't fall. You think I didn't hate myself? She asked. You think watching you stand there while investors turned on you didn't break me? Then why didn't you tell me after? He demanded. When charges were dropped? When everything burned down anyway? She looked away. Because he wasn't done. Daniel went still. He showed me evidence, she continued. Documents tying you to offshore accounts. Fabricated, but convincing. He said if I spoke to you, he'd escalate. Add federal tax fraud, add obstruction, make it permanent. Daniel's mind raced. It had felt constructed. Too precise, too layered. Why didn't you come to me when it was over? He asked more quietly now. Her answer came fragile and raw. Because by then, you hated me. He stared at her. You never gave me the chance to do anything else, she shook her head.
I saw your face that night. I saw what I did to you. What you did? He repeated. Yes, her voice broke fully now, because even if Marcus orchestrated it, I chose silence. The room felt smaller. He wanted to believe her. He wanted to reject it. Both impulses warred inside him. You expect me to accept that you sacrificed us to protect me? He asked. No, she said softly. I expect you to know the truth. He stepped closer, his voice low and dangerous. And if I don't believe you? Her eyes met his, steady despite the tears. Then I lose you twice. Silence. 5 years of rage, grief, pride, all colliding with the possibility that the story he told himself might not be complete. Why now? He asked finally. Her face paled slightly. Because he contacted me again. Daniel's expression hardened. What did he say? Her answer came in a whisper that carried the weight of everything. He said, if I ever told you, he would destroy you completely. And for the first time since you walked into his building, Daniel felt something far more dangerous than anger. He felt the beginning of war. Daniel didn't sleep that night. Elena's words replayed in his mind on a loop. He wasn't done. At 3 in the morning, he sat alone in his office, city lights flickering across the dark glass. The name Adrian Keller still felt dangerous inside his own head, but something else felt more dangerous now. What if I was never the main target? He opened an encrypted terminal and began digging. Marcus Hale had always been charismatic, ambitious, socially flawless. Investors loved him. Media trusted him. He knew how to position himself as the reasonable one in every room. But Daniel wasn't looking for charisma. He was looking for patterns. He started with old Aegis Shield records, archive contracts, vendor partnerships, minor disputes that once seemed insignificant.
2 hours later, something caught his attention. A small subcontractor from 4 years ago. Security Integration Project. The contract had been terminated abruptly. The CEO of that company had later filed for bankruptcy. Daniel opened court documents. Fraud allegations. Internal accounting discrepancies. CEO blamed. Marcus had been the liaison on that deal. Daniel leaned back slowly. Coincidence? Maybe. He kept digging. Another startup. Another financial irregularity. Different state. Different board. Marcus had advised them briefly as a consultant. 3 months later, the CFO resigned under investigation. Daniel's pulse steadied, not faster, sharper. He picked up his phone and called the one person he trusted with quiet investigations. Nora, he said when she answered groggily. I need a full background reconstruction on Marcus Hale. Off-grid, corporate filings, shell companies, litigation history. Go back 10 years. There was a pause. This about the woman from yesterday? She asked carefully. It's about leverage. She didn't press further. I'll start now. By afternoon, his office table was covered in printed documents. Corporate structures layered like Russian nesting dolls. LLCs registered under distant associates. Advisory roles that ended abruptly before scandal surfaced. Marcus didn't steal loudly. He destabilized. He positioned himself near power, waited, collected information, then pulled one thread and watched the fabric tear. Daniel felt something awakening inside him. Not grief, not even anger. Clarity. 5 years ago, he had framed himself as the betrayed visionary, the naive lover, the victim of ambition and romance colliding. But what if that wasn't the full story? What if Marcus had been maneuvering long before the buyout plan? Daniel replayed old conversations in his mind. Marcus encouraging aggressive expansion. Marcus insisting on certain vendors. Marcus suggesting late-night system updates that only Adrian should authorize. Had he been guided into isolation? He closed his eyes briefly. How much of my downfall was engineered? The question didn't weaken him, it sharpened him. Elena's face surfaced in his thoughts again, fearful, restrained, carrying 5 years of guilt. If she was telling the truth, then she hadn't been the mastermind. She had been leverage, and he had never considered that possibility. A quiet knock interrupted his thoughts. Nora entered with a folder thicker than the rest. You're going to want to see this. She placed it in front of him. Inside were federal court filings from 2 months ago. Marcus Hale's name appeared in a sealed investigation notice. Daniel's eyes scanned quickly. Suspicion of financial coercion, witness intimidation, offshore manipulation tied to multiple tech startups. The case was ongoing. His jaw tightened. He's under federal investigation, Nora confirmed softly. It's not public yet. Sealed proceedings. Daniel felt the shift fully now. 5 years ago, he had been cornered, stripped, silenced. Now, Marcus wasn't untouchable. "Does Elena know?" Nora asked. "I doubt it," Daniel replied. He stood and walked toward the window overlooking the bay. The rain had stopped. The water was still. 5 years ago he ran. He erased himself, changed his name, built walls high enough that no one could reach him again. But this wasn't about hiding. This was about strategy. For the first time since the ballroom, he didn't feel like a man who had been destroyed. He felt like a man who had been misdirected. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He stared at it for a long moment before answering. "Daniel Cross," he said calmly. A familiar voice responded, smooth, controlled, almost amused. "I was wondering how long it would take you to start digging." Daniel's grip tightened slightly on the phone. "Marcus." A soft chuckle echoed through the line.
"Stay sharp. I always admired that about you." Daniel's voice remained level. "You should have finished what you started." Marcus's tone darkened just a fraction. "Oh, Adrian," he said quietly, deliberately using the old name. "You really think this is over?" The line went silent, and for the first time in 5 years, Daniel didn't feel like disappearing. He felt ready to step back into the fight. Daniel didn't call her right away. After Marcus's voice disappeared from the line, he stood motionless in his office, phone still in his hand, heart steady but burning. He had imagined this moment for years, a confrontation, a reckoning, but not like this, not with uncertainty creeping into places where hatred used to live. That evening, he texted Elena a single message. "Come back tomorrow, 7 p.m., alone." She replied within seconds, "I will." She arrived exactly on time, no hesitation, no theatrics. Daniel dismissed Nora early and locked the office door himself. Elena stood near the window when he entered the conference room. The fading light painted her in soft grey shadows. For a moment, memory blurred with reality. 5 years ago, she used to wait for him like that, in kitchens, in hotel rooms, in quiet corners after long investor dinners. "You used to hate being late," he said without greeting. She gave a faint, sad smile. "You used to hate losing control." He didn't react. "I spoke to Marcus," he said. Her face tightened instantly. "When?" "Today." Fear flickered there again. "What did he say?" "That he was curious how long it would take me to start digging." She looked down. "So you believe me now?" she asked quietly. "I believe there's more to the story than I allowed myself to see." That wasn't forgiveness, but it wasn't rejection either. Silence stretched between them, heavy but fragile. "Why didn't you fight for me?" he asked suddenly. The question landed raw. She blinked. "I did." "No," he said, stepping closer. "You fought in the shadows. You made decisions for me. You decided what I could survive." Her breathing grew uneven. "He told me you would go to prison," she whispered. "He showed me draft indictments. He had connections inside regulatory offices. I panicked." "You don't panic," Daniel said sharply. "You calculate." "I loved you," she shot back, voice breaking. "That was the problem." The words hit him harder than anger ever had. Flashbacks rushed in without omission. Elena sitting cross-legged on his living room floor, reviewing pitch decks with him at 2 in the morning. Elena tracing circles on his wrist the night before the Series B closed, whispering, "Whatever happens, we handle it together." Elena laughing in the kitchen when he burned pasta because he was too distracted by her. He had buried those memories under betrayal. Now they resurfaced, unwanted and painfully vivid. "You don't get to use love as an excuse," he said more quietly now. "I'm not," she replied. "I'm telling you I was terrified. Of him? Of losing you." He stared at her. "You lost me anyway." Tears finally spilled down her cheeks, but she didn't wipe them away. "I know," she said. The honesty in her voice disarmed him more than any defense could have. He turned away, pacing once across the room. "You stood there that night," he said, voice lower now. "You looked at me like I was already gone. I was trying not to fall apart. You walked into that elevator. Because if I stayed," she whispered, "I would have told you everything." He froze. "And he would have followed through," she continued. "He said if you confronted him publicly before the transfers were complete, he would escalate, make it criminal beyond repair." Daniel closed his eyes briefly. 5 years of anger had given him structure, direction, purpose. Now grief was creeping back in. You should have trusted me, he said. I didn't trust myself, she replied. That confession lingered in the air. He looked at her fully now, not as a villain, not as a memory, but as a woman who looked exhausted from carrying something too heavy for too long. I never stopped loving you, she said, barely audible. The words hung between them like something dangerous. He felt the impact of them deep in his chest, because the truth was, part of him had never stopped either, and that terrified him. Don't, he said, voice rougher than before. Don't what? Don't make this about what we had. But it is, she insisted. Everything he did worked because he knew how much I loved you. Daniel exhaled slowly. Love had been leverage. Trust had been weaponized. He stepped closer again, close enough now that he could see the faint lines time had drawn around her eyes. If I accept even part of what you're saying, he said carefully, then I have to rewrite 5 years of my life. I know. He studied her for a long moment. All the anger, all the nights he convinced himself she had chosen ambition over him. And now he wasn't sure. His voice dropped, steady but weighted with something deeper than accusation. Why come back now, Elena? She swallowed, and for the first time since she walked into his building, she looked like she was about to tell him something that would change everything. Elena didn't answer immediately. She looked toward the darkened window, gathering herself, as if the truth required physical strength. Because he found me again, she said. Daniel's expression hardened. Define found. He started with emails, she replied, encrypted, no return trace. Then calls from blocked numbers. And you didn't change your number? I did, her voice tightened. He changed his tactics. Daniel felt something cold slide into place inside him. What does he want? He asked. He never says it directly. She shook her head. He references the past, the investigation, the transfers. He reminds me how easily narratives can be rewritten. Daniel stepped closer. Show me. She pulled her phone from her bag and handed it to him. An email thread filled the screen. No greeting, no signature. Funny how the truth depends on who tells it. I wonder how Seattle would react if certain documents resurfaced. You know how fragile reputations are. Daniel's jaw clenched. He's bluffing, he said automatically. Is he? She whispered. There was another message. Tell Adrian I said hello. Daniel's eyes froze on that line. You told him you found me? He asked sharply. No, her voice rose in panic. I never told him where you were, I swear. Then how does he know I'm in Seattle? I don't know. Fear wasn't dramatic in her. It was controlled, tight beneath the surface. But it was there. He said if I tried to expose him, she continued, he would reopen everything, claim new evidence, say you manipulated the first investigation. Daniel handed the phone back slowly. He can't reopen a federal case without grounds. He doesn't need it to hold, she replied. He just needs it to trend. That hit him. Marcus didn't operate through courtrooms. He operated through perception. Daniel paced once across the room. You think he wants money? No. Control? Always. Silence thickened. And why warn me now? He asked carefully. If he's threatening you, why not keep me out of it? Her eyes lifted to his. Because last time I tried to protect you by staying silent. The admission was soft, heavy. And this time, he pressed, this time I'm choosing you. The words cracked something in him. He forced himself to remain composed. You understand what this means, he said. If he's escalating, he's desperate. Or confident, she replied. Daniel studied her. You're scared, he observed. Yes, she admitted. For yourself? She hesitated. For you. That answer ignited something he thought he had buried years ago. Protectiveness. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't soft. It was instinct. He hated that it still lived inside him. He won't touch me, Daniel said, more firmly than he felt. He'd have to expose himself to do it. He's already exposing himself, she whispered. Daniel stopped pacing. What aren't you telling me? Her lips trembled slightly before she spoke. He called me yesterday. Daniel's voice went still. And? He said you were starting to look into his past. She swallowed. He sounded amused. Daniel's pulse slowed into something razor-sharp. He's watching, she continued. Or someone is.
He moved toward his desk, mind racing through security protocols, surveillance possibilities, digital footprints. You came here because you think he'll attack me again, he said. I came because I think he already has. The weight of that settled heavily between them. For 5 years, Daniel had believed he had escaped, changed his name, changed his life, built something clean. What if Marcus had been aware the entire time? You shouldn't have come here, Daniel said suddenly. Her eyes widened. What? If he's monitoring you, walking into my office confirms everything. She went pale. I didn't think. No, he cut in, frustration flashing. You didn't. The room fell silent. He immediately regretted the sharpness. She straightened slightly, reclaiming composure. I won't apologize for trying to fix what I broke. The words lingered. Daniel exhaled slowly. This isn't about fixing us, he said. This is about strategy. A faint, sad smile touched her lips. It was always about strategy with you. And it wasn't with him, Daniel shot back. That shut her down. They stood there, 5 years of history woven tightly into every look. I can handle Marcus, Daniel said finally. You couldn't last time, she replied softly. The truth of that stung. Before he could respond, his phone vibrated sharply on the desk. Unknown number. Both of them froze. It vibrated again. Elena's breathing grew shallow. Daniel walked to the desk and picked it up slowly. The screen displayed a text message. No number, just an encrypted sender ID. You really should have stayed gone, Adrian. The room seemed to tilt slightly. Elena covered her mouth. Daniel's expression didn't change, but something inside him did. 5 years ago he ran. This time. His phone buzzed again. Incoming call. Same encrypted ID. Daniel looked at Elena once, then answered. Hello? A familiar, smooth voice filled the silence. Miss me? Daniel didn't answer the taunt. He let the silence stretch. On the other end of the line, Marcus Hale breathed evenly, controlled as ever. Not rushed, not angry, calculated. I was beginning to think you'd lost your edge, Marcus continued lightly. New name, new city, smaller ambitions. It almost hurt my feelings. Elena stood across the desk, frozen, her eyes locked on Daniel's face. Daniel's voice came out calm, too calm. What do you want? A soft chuckle. Straight to business. That's the Adrian I remember. My name is Daniel. Is it? Marcus replied. Funny. The federal database still recognizes you as Adrian Keller. Drop charges don't erase history. Elena flinched. Daniel didn't. You're under investigation, Daniel said evenly. You should be careful about making threats. A pause. Then Marcus laughed, lower now. You've been digging. I'm impressed. So you admit it. I admit nothing, Marcus replied smoothly. But I will say this, you always were brilliant. Just emotionally vulnerable. The words pressed against an old wound. Daniel's grip tightened on the phone. You manipulated internal systems, Daniel said. You engineered the transfers. Marcus's tone shifted slightly. Prove it. Silence. You can't, Marcus continued, because every move I made was legal on paper. Aggressive? Perhaps, but not illegal. You blackmailed her, Daniel shot back. Across the desk, Elena's breathing hitched. Marcus didn't hesitate. Elena made choices. You threatened her family. I presented possibilities. Daniel's jaw clenched. This was the game. Language, framing, rewriting reality until guilt looked like negotiation. You ruined my company, Daniel said quietly. No, Marcus replied sharply now. You ruined it the moment you decided you didn't need me. There it was, the truth beneath the strategy, ego. You planned to cut me out, Marcus continued, voice losing its smooth edge. After everything I built with you. You built access, Daniel corrected, not loyalty. Another silence, tighter this time. Marcus exhaled slowly. I'm going to make this simple, he said. You stop digging, you keep your small, quiet life, and I let the past stay buried. And if I don't? A beat. Then certain financial patterns might resurface. Certain anonymous tips might reach certain journalists. Seattle's tech community can be unforgiving. Elena shook her head slowly, whispering, he'll do it. Daniel didn't look at her. 5 years ago, that threat would have suffocated him. Back then, his identity was tied to reputation, to public image, to empire. But Daniel Cross had built something different, smaller, stronger, quieter. You think I'm afraid of losing status again? Daniel asked softly. I think you're afraid of losing control, Marcus replied. Daniel almost smiled. Control isn't the same as fear. Marcus's voice cooled. You disappeared once. You can do it again. Daniel's eyes darkened. No, he said. The word wasn't loud, but it carried weight. On the other end of the line, Marcus went silent. I'm not disappearing this time, Daniel continued. You made one mistake. And what's that? You assumed I'd react the same way. A longer pause now. Dangerous. You're not as untouchable as you think, Daniel added. Federal investigations have a way of expanding. Marcus's tone shifted again, less amused now. Careful, he warned.
Mutually assured destruction isn't a victory. Daniel met Elena's eyes across the desk. For the first time since she walked back into his life, he didn't see betrayal there. He saw fear, and something else. Hope. You should have left me buried, Daniel said quietly into the phone. You had 5 years. And you should have known better than to threaten me, Marcus shot back. Daniel ended the call. Silence flooded the room. Elena stepped forward. He'll retaliate. Yes, Daniel agreed calmly. You don't understand how far he'll go. I do. She searched his face. Then why are you so calm? Because 5 years ago I lost everything, and I survived. He moved around the desk and stood directly in front of her. I built my first company on trust, he said. This one was built on defense. Her eyes flickered with realization. You've been preparing, she whispered. Not for him, Daniel replied. For anyone. He picked up his phone again and dialed Nora. We're escalating, he said simply. Contact our federal liaison. Quietly. I want a formal briefing on the Hale investigation. He ended the call and looked at Elena. This doesn't stay in the shadows anymore. Her voice trembled. You're going public? If he wants leverage, Daniel said, a controlled fire rising behind his calm exterior, we remove it. She stepped closer. That means reopening everything. Your name, the past, the accusations. Yes. And if he counters? Daniel held her gaze. Then we fight. The word hung between them, no longer about love, no longer about survival. War. Elena's breath shook slightly. You really going to do this? He nodded once. 5 years ago, Adrian Keller had collapsed under betrayal. Tonight, Daniel Cross chose something different. I'm taking my name back, he said quietly, and somewhere in the distance, the first domino had already begun to fall. The federal building in downtown Seattle smelled like polished stone and quiet authority. Daniel hadn't walked into a place like this in 5 years. This time, he didn't come as a suspect. He came prepared. He sat across from Special Agent Rebecca Lawson, a sharp-eyed investigator who had been quietly reviewing Marcus Hale's financial network for months. You're saying Hale constructed layered shell entities designed to simulate internal embezzlement, Lawson said, flipping through the dossier Daniel had compiled. Yes, Daniel replied evenly, and I believe my case was a prototype. Lawson studied him. Why come forward now? Because 5 years ago I was reacting, he said. Now I'm thinking. Elena sat beside him, hands folded tightly in her lap. Lawson's gaze shifted to her. Miss Whitmore, you're prepared to make a formal statement? Elena nodded, her voice steady despite the tension in her shoulders. Yes. Daniel felt the weight of that word. Yes. Not silence. Not retreat. Yes. Over the next 2 hours, Elena described the hotel meeting, the threats, the fabricated indictments Marcus showed her, the leverage over her father's medical records. She didn't dramatize it. She didn't soften it. She owned her choices. I thought staying quiet would protect him, she said at one point, her voice barely wavering. I was wrong. Daniel didn't look at her when she said it, because part of him still felt the sting, but another part recognized something different. Courage. Lawson closed the notebook slowly. If what you're describing aligns with what we've uncovered in other cases, this establishes a pattern. Daniel leaned forward. You have other cases? Lawson gave him a measured look. Hale has been very careful, but patterns repeat, especially with men who believe they're smarter than everyone else. For the first time in years, Daniel felt something close to justice. Not revenge, not anger. Balance. Weeks passed in controlled escalation. Daniel provided archived server logs he had preserved quietly under Daniel Cross. Old encrypted backups Marcus never knew existed. Forensic teams reconstructed access trails, digital timestamps, administrative overrides. The picture sharpened. Marcus hadn't just manipulated perception. He had manipulated infrastructure. One evening, as Daniel reviewed updates in his office, Elena stood near the window. You don't have to stay, he told her without looking up. I know, but you are. She hesitated. I owe you that.
He finally met her eyes. This isn't about that. Then what is it? He searched for the right word. Accountability. She nodded slowly. Trust wasn't back, but something was rebuilding. Not the version they once had. Something quieter, more deliberate. 3 days later, Daniel's phone rang. Agent Lawson. They're moving, she said simply. How soon? Tomorrow morning. Daniel ended the call and stared at the city skyline. 5 years ago, he watched everything collapse from a penthouse window. Tomorrow, something else would fall.
The news broke at 9:17 a.m. Tech executive Marcus Hale arrested in federal fraud and coercion case.
Daniel didn't turn on the television. He didn't need to. Nora stepped into his office, eyes wide. It's everywhere. He nodded once. Elena stood in the doorway behind her. It's real, she whispered. Daniel looked at her carefully. Marcus Hale was in custody, charged with financial fraud, witness intimidation, digital manipulation across multiple corporations. Adrian Keller's name was mentioned too, but this time as the original complainant. The narrative had shifted. Slowly. Publicly. Lawyers would argue, media would speculate, commentators would debate, but the core truth was finally visible. He hadn't stolen from his company. He had been engineered out of it. Elena stepped closer. You did it. Daniel shook his head slightly. No, we did. The word hung between them. We. It felt fragile. Possible, but fragile. His phone buzzed again, this time with messages from former investors, old colleagues, even journalists requesting statements, opportunities, invitations, resurrection. He stared at the screen, then set the phone face down. Elena watched him carefully. You're not celebrating. He exhaled slowly. Because winning doesn't give me back 5 years. Silence settled. Marcus was arrested, but the scars remained. Reputation could be restored. Trust was harder. Daniel looked at Elena. She looked back, hopeful, cautious, afraid. The battle was won, but the war inside him wasn't over. And for the first time since reclaiming his name, he wasn't sure what rebuilding would truly cost. The apology came on a Tuesday morning, not privately, not quietly, publicly. Daniel, Adrian, watched it unfold on a muted screen in his office. A former board member of Aegis Shield stood behind the podium, expression grave and rehearsed. In light of recent federal findings, the man said, we formally acknowledge that Adrian Keller was wrongfully implicated in financial misconduct. The company regrets the damage done to his reputation. Regrets. The word felt small. Too small for 5 years. News outlets followed quickly. Keller cleared in Hale fraud case. Former CEO framed by business partner. Tech world reacts to shocking reversal. Daniel sat back in his chair and let it wash over him. 5 years ago, he couldn't breathe under the weight of headlines. Now, he felt almost nothing. Nora stepped in with her tablet. You're trending, she said. In a good way. He gave her a look. She shrugged lightly. Well, better than before. His phone buzzed non-stop. Old investors reaching out. Venture capital firms expressing renewed interest. One message stood out from a major Silicon Valley fund. We would welcome the opportunity to discuss your next venture. Next venture. He stared at that phrase longer than he expected. Elena entered quietly a few minutes later. She had been keeping her distance since Marcus's arrest, giving him space he hadn't asked for, but hadn't rejected either. It's official, she said softly. You have your name back. He nodded. Does it feel different? She asked. He considered the question. I don't know, he admitted. She studied him carefully. You don't look relieved. He stood and walked toward the window overlooking the bay. 5 years ago, he believed success defined him. When it vanished, he thought he had vanished with it. Then he became Daniel Cross, stronger, colder, untouchable. Now both versions stood in the same body. I thought clearing my name would feel like victory, he said quietly. Like closure. And? It doesn't. She stepped closer but didn't touch him. What does it feel like? She asked. Like I survived something, he replied, but I'm not sure who survived. Silence filled the space between them. He turned to face her. For 5 years, I told myself revenge would balance it, that exposing Marcus would make it right. And did it? She asked gently. No. The honesty surprised even him. Marcus was in custody. His schemes exposed, his empire dismantled. But the nights Adrian had spent staring at a ceiling in a dark apartment under a different name, those didn't disappear. The friendships lost, the trust shattered, the version of himself that once believed love and ambition could coexist. Those weren't restored by headline. His phone buzzed again. Another offer, another opportunity. You could rebuild, Elena said carefully. Bigger than before. I could, he agreed. But... He gave a faint, almost tired smile. But I don't know if I want to be that man again. She looked at him for a long moment. I never loved the Empire, she said quietly. I loved you. The words landed differently now, less desperate, more grounded. He studied her face, the subtle lines time had drawn there, the strength she had shown in testifying, the fear she still carried. And who am I now? He asked. It wasn't rhetorical, it was real. She didn't answer immediately. You're someone who didn't run this time, she said finally. That lingered, because it was true. He hadn't disappeared, he had stepped forward, even when it meant reopening scars. A knock interrupted them. Nora peeked in. There's a call from a journalist at the Chronicle. They want a live interview, prime time. Daniel shook his head. Decline. Nora hesitated. This is your chance to control the narrative. I'm done performing, he replied calmly. She nodded and withdrew. Elena watched him carefully. You don't need the spotlight anymore, she observed. No, he said. I need something else. She searched his face as if hoping to hear what that something was. Instead, he asked, What about you? She blinked. What about me? Marcus is gone. The investigation is public. You don't have to stay here. The air shifted. She looked away briefly. I'd been thinking about that, she admitted. His chest tightened slightly. I applied for a position in Boston, she continued. Non-profit tech ethics board. It's quieter. Boston, distance, a new start. He nodded slowly. When would you leave? Soon, she said, if they accept. Silence stretched between them again. 5 years ago, she had walked into an elevator and vanished. Now she was preparing to walk away openly. Are you running? He asked quietly. She met his eyes. No, she said. I'm choosing. The word echoed. Choosing. And as she stood there, poised between staying and leaving, Daniel realized something that unsettled him more than betrayal ever had. He had reclaimed his name, but he hadn't yet decided who he wanted to become next. And this time, the choice wouldn't be made by fear. Elena didn't tell him when the offer became official. Daniel found out because he walked into her apartment and saw the half-packed suitcase on the couch. Not dramatic, not rushed. Careful. Folded sweaters, a stack of documents, a framed photo face down on the coffee table. You're leaving, he said quietly. She froze for a fraction of a second before turning around. I was going to tell you tonight. When? Friday. 3 days. He nodded once, as if she had just confirmed the meeting time. That's fast. It's clean, she corrected gently. Clean. He stepped further into the room. Boston? She nodded. The ethics board wants me to start immediately. After everything that happened, it feels right. Right, he repeated. Silence stretched between them, thick but controlled. You don't have to explain, he said finally. I know. Her voice softened. But I want to. He waited. She took a breath. You deserve a life that isn't built around what I broke. That landed harder than he expected. Elena, no, she said, not sharply but firmly. I betrayed you. I believed Marcus. I doubted you when you needed me most. And now you have your name back, your reputation, your future. She swallowed. You shouldn't tie that future to someone who failed you. Daniel felt something old rising inside him. Pride, defense, the instinct to detach before being left. So this is what, he asked. Self-sacrifice? It's accountability. He let out a slow breath. You testified against him, he said. You risked your own reputation. Because it was the truth. And that doesn't matter? It doesn't erase what I did. He stepped closer. You think I need someone flawless? No, she whispered. I think you need someone who didn't walk away. There it was, the wound beneath everything. 5 years ago, she stepped into an elevator and disappeared while his world burned. He had told himself he was over that image. He wasn't. You left, he said quietly. I was scared. So was I. Her eyes shimmered but didn't break. I know. The room felt smaller now, closer. You think living now makes it noble? He asked. I think staying might make it selfish, she replied. That stopped him. Because she meant it. She wasn't running from consequences. She was running from hope. Daniel looked at the suitcase, at the careful folding, at the life she was preparing to build somewhere he didn't exist. Do you want to go? He asked. She hesitated. That's not the same question. It is to me. Her voice dropped. I want you to have everything you lost. That's not what I asked. She closed her eyes briefly. No, she admitted. I don't want to leave. The honesty shifted the air. Then why are you? He pressed. Because loving you feels like walking into something I already destroyed once. He stared at her. For 5 years, he said slowly, I told myself I didn't love you anymore. She looked up at that. I told myself it was anger, pride, habit. His voice steadied. It wasn't. Her breath caught. I never stopped, he finished. The words didn't explode. They settled. Heavy. Real. Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't step forward. Daniel. Don't, he said softly. Don't make this about what I deserve. I'm not a prize you ruined. He moved closer until there was barely space between them. I'm a man who was hurt, and who survived, and who still, his voice faltered for the first time, still wants you. Vulnerability, raw, unshielded. Elena's hands trembled slightly at her sides. If we try again, she whispered, it won't be the same. He held her gaze. I don't want the same. The old version of them had been built on ambition, speed, certainty. This version would be slower, bruised, honest. And if I fail you again? She asked. You won't, he said quietly. You can't know that. No, he admitted, but I know this. He reached for her hand, not forcefully, not possessively, carefully. I'm done choosing safety over truth. Her fingers tightened around his. Outside, the city lights flickered on one by one, as if marking a decision neither of them had fully spoken yet. The suitcase still sat on the couch, unzipped, waiting, and for the first time, Elena didn't know whether she would finish packing. The suitcase was still open. Neither of them touched it. Elena sat on the edge of the couch, her hands clasped tightly together, as if she were holding herself in place. Daniel remained standing for a moment, then slowly sat across from her. No anger now, no dramatic declarations. Just two people facing what they had avoided for years. I need to say something, she began quietly. He nodded. I didn't just leave because Marcus manipulated me. Her voice trembled slightly but didn't break. I left because I was already afraid of you. Daniel's expression shifted, not defensive but alert. Afraid of what? Of how much you were changing, she admitted. You were building something massive, powerful, and I didn't know where I fit in it anymore. He leaned back slightly, absorbing that. You never said that. I tried, she said softly, but every time I brought up how distant you were becoming, you told me it was temporary, that once the company stabilized, we'd be fine. And I believed that, he replied. I know. She looked up at him, eyes clear now, but I felt alone long before Marcus ever stepped in. The words hurt, not because they were cruel, because they were honest. Daniel exhaled slowly. I thought protecting you meant shielding you from the pressure, from the risks. You shut me out instead. Silence. He could see it now, late nights at the office, cancelled dinners, half-finished conversations. He had been so focused on securing the future that he hadn't noticed the present unraveling. And when Marcus showed me those fake documents, she continued, it fit the story I was already afraid of, that I was capable of betraying you. She nodded. I didn't trust my instincts. I trusted my fear. Daniel looked down at his hands. For 5 years, I told myself, you chose him over me. I didn't choose him, she whispered. I chose the version of you I was afraid of. That settled between them heavily. Both have been wrong. Both have been wounded. And I chose pride, Daniel said after a moment. When the accusations came, I didn't fight for us. I disappeared. Elena's eyes flickered. You were drowning. Yes, he agreed. But instead of reaching for you, I decided I didn't need anyone. That hurt too, she admitted. They sat there in the rawness of it. No villains in this room now, just consequences. I can't erase what happened, she said, and I don't expect you to forget it. I won't, he answered honestly. The truth didn't scare her this time. But forgiveness, he continued, isn't pretending it didn't happen. She searched his face. Then what is it? It's deciding it doesn't get to control what happens next. Her breath caught slightly. Do you forgive me? She asked. He didn't rush the answer. Yes, he said finally. But that doesn't mean it doesn't still hurt. Tears slid down her cheeks, quiet and unguarded. That's fair. He moved closer, not to erase the space, but to share it. And I need you to forgive me too, he added. She frowned slightly. For what? For building a life that didn't leave room for you, for assuming strength meant silence, for thinking love could wait until after success. Her hand reached for his instinctively. I never wanted perfection, she said. I wanted partnership, and I'm finally ready for that. Not the empire builder, not the exile, just him. They sat in stillness, hands intertwined, breathing the same fragile air. So what does this look like? She asked. Slow, he answered immediately. No grand gestures, no rushing back into what we were. She gave a small, shaky smile. Dating? He almost smiled back. Radical concept. Honest conversations, she added. Even when they're uncomfortable. Especially then. Outside, the city hummed as it always had, indifferent to personal revolutions. Elena glanced at the suitcase. I don't want to run anymore, she said. Then don't. But if we do this, she continued carefully, we start as who we are now, not who we were. Daniel squeezed her hand gently. Agreed. No dramatic kiss, no sweeping promise, just a quiet decision. To begin again. Not as the ambitious tech golden couple, not as the broken versions who hurt each other, but as two people who had survived loss, pride, betrayal, and were choosing vulnerability anyway. The suitcase remained open, unpacked, and for the first time in years, their future wasn't built on fear. It was built on choice. The auditorium wasn't packed. That was intentional. No dramatic comeback tour, no roaring applause. Just industry leaders, a handful of journalists, and people who genuinely wanted to hear what Adrian Keller had to say. Daniel stood backstage, staring at the name printed on the digital screen. Adrian Keller, founder and CEO, Veritas Systems. Not Daniel Cross, not the exile. Adrian. He adjusted his cufflinks slowly. His hands weren't shaking, but they weren't entirely steady either. Elena stepped beside him. You don't have to prove anything, she said quietly. He glanced at her. I'm not here to prove. Then why are you nervous? He allowed himself a small smile. Because this time, it matters for different reasons. Veritas Systems wasn't built on speed or dominance. It was built on transparency architecture, software designed to prevent executive-level manipulation inside corporations. Internal oversight coded into infrastructure. No single person could override the system without traceable consensus. No more Marcus Hales. No more silent collapses. You could have rebuilt Aegis, Elena said. I don't want the old empire, he replied. I want something better. She studied him, pride soft but visible. And if this fails, it won't be because I compromise who I am. That was the difference. 5 years ago, ambition had been oxygen. Now, integrity was. A stage coordinator signaled. It was time. Adrian stepped into the light. The room quieted, not with excitement, but with attention. He walked to the podium and looked out at faces that once doubted him. Some still did. Good. I won't take much of your time, he began evenly. No theatrics, no bitterness. 5 years ago, I disappeared from this industry under accusations that have since been proven false. A subtle shift in the room. I could stand here and talk about vindication, about injustice. He paused. But that's not why I'm here. Elena watched from the side curtain, heart steady but full. I'm here because power without accountability destroys more than reputations, Adrian continued. It destroys trust. It destroys partnerships. It destroys people. He let that settle. I have built a system once that allowed that imbalance. Not intentionally, but structurally. Honesty, not defensiveness. And I won't do that again. The screen behind him shifted to the Veritas interface. Clean, transparent, layered with ethical safeguards. This company isn't about control, he said. It's about protection. No applause yet, just listening. I'm reclaiming my name today not because it was stolen, he finished quietly, but because I finally understand what it stands for. Silence. Then measured applause. Respectful. Earned. Not explosive.
real. Later, outside the building, the air felt lighter. Not victorious, grounded. Reporters called his name, but he ignored most of them. He answered only a few questions, briefly, calmly. No jabs at Marcus, no dramatic retelling. That chapter no longer defined him. When the crowd thinned, Elena approached. "You were different up there," she said. "I hope so." She smiled faintly.
You didn't sound like someone trying to reclaim power. I'm not, he replied. I'm choosing how to use it. She stepped closer. Are you sure you're ready for this? She asked, not about the company, about them. He didn't hesitate this time. Yes. No pride, no armor, just certainty. I don't need you to save me, he added softly, and I don't need to save you. I know, we choose this, he said. Every day, she replied. He reached for her hand, not possessively, deliberately. The city moved around them. Cars passed. Conversations blended into background noise. Life continued. There would still be scars, still be difficult conversations. Trust would still require tending. But this time, nothing was built on illusion. Elena looked up at him. You didn't disappear, she said quietly. He met her eyes. No. 5 years ago, when she walked away, something inside him fractured. But he hadn't vanished. He had rebuilt. And this time, he wasn't chasing power. He wasn't running from pain. He was standing still. By choice. She broke him once, but this time he chose not to disappear.